what in the name of Satan's toast rack were the finest 10 horror movies of 2022? I'm going to tell you my own 10 favourites based on what I managed to see this year, and then I'd like you to get down in comments and tell me your own top 10s, or maybe just the odd movie that you think I've egregiously missed from the list. This whole video will be spoiler free, so let's go! And number 10 in this list is the new Hellraiser movie. Now, I accept that the Hellraiser movies, or especially the original and the second one, are classics of horror, although for some reason I've never really connected with them all that much. But I enjoyed this one. I think it was good. Probably overlong at 2 hours, and certainly not without its faults. But it has some really good characters. Riley, the main character, is quite an interesting and messed up person, and her flatmates are really quite likeable, unusually likeable, I think. And so when terrible things start to happen, you kind of feel it a bit more than you otherwise might. There's a new Pinhead, and I think that character is pretty effective, and this Pinhead certainly does something quite creative and horrible with one of the pins that she removes from her head. Yeah, that's quite a memorable and quite nasty, in fact very nasty moment. I think it was a really good attempt at a new Hellraiser movie in 2022. Even though I haven't watched most of the original sequels, there's about a run of 7 or 8 of them, I'll wager that this new Hellraiser movie is better than at least 3/4 of them. The first half is just a little bit too shy with showing us the red stuff, but then once it gets going, it really does get going. Let me know what you thought about the movie down there. Number 9 in this list is Netflix's remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Simply called Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I think. Oh my god, these Texas Chainsaw titles are getting so confusing. There's been about 9 or 10 of them now, except I had a good time with this one. I think it was a great, rip-roaring, super gory, really nasty piece of work. A group of teens head off to a conveniently remote town with the aim of gentrifying it, and Leatherface is disturbed, obviously, very much so, in the head and in terms of them disturbing him, and he sets off on a killing spree. What a shocker. Now, this movie doesn't even try to evoke the kind of gritty realism of Tobe Hooper's 70s original, and of course it's nowhere near as good, but in its own way, it's a blast. If you don't mind this movie taking on a bit more of a jokey air, but also a really nasty air at the same time, let me tell you one moment in the movie just to give you an idea of the tone we're dealing with. Leatherface gets onto a bus full of partying youngsters, all using their mobile phones, and one of them threatens to cancel Leatherface if he doesn't get off the bus. That was actually quite amusing. And of course, slaughter ensues. Yes, there's a lot of it in this film, and the final scene is really nasty and very memorable. At number 8, we have X, the movie by the director Ty West, who's made quite a few interesting and decent horror movies. X is set in the 70s in kind of Texas Chainsaw kind of territory, and it follows an adult movie film crew as they infiltrate a farmhouse, making an adult movie unbeknown to the elderly couple who live across the way in the farmhouse. And then people start to die. And it's a slasher movie basically, and it's a pretty gory and nasty one. It certainly has its moments, but it does some really interesting things and kind of has a kind of an interesting theme and a few interesting things to say. And the villain or villains of the movie are kind of unusual. It's not your typical kind of gurning loon walking around with a hatchet. There's something going on here in this movie that is kind of a bit like an M. Night Shyamalan movie, and that makes it interesting. This is actually the first movie in a trilogy, and there's a prequel called Pearl that also came out this year. I haven't watched it yet because, I don't know, prequels just don't particularly interest me. Did I miss out? Tell me down in comments. At number 7, we have Scream, aka Scream 5, or at least it should have been called Scream 5, but clearly the studio and the filmmakers shied away from that. You can understand why. Fifth films don't tend to be all that popular, and this film does, of course, as Scream always does, take the mickey out of itself and be very self-referential and self-aware about the nature of movie reboots, and that's kind of what the story of the film is all about, and it's really good. Now, back in the 90s, I loved the Scream movies. I thought they were the greatest things in horror at that time, and they probably were in the mid-90s. I liked the way that Scream just completely kicked horror right up the backside. And yeah, the first trilogy was great, and then a long time later Scream 4 came along, and the moment had passed. I was not so keen on that, but this is better. It's more vicious, and I think it tries to reinvent Scream in the same way that the Halloween movies have been reinvented over the last few years with a new trilogy. And in fact, there's a new Scream movie due in 2023. I'm not sure what it's going to be called. It surely can't be called Scream 6, and hopefully it won't be called Scream 2. Oh dear God. But this does have original cast members, by the way, as you can see there. It's got Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox and David Arquette, along with a whole new raft of younger faces, most of whom are about to be stabbed. I wouldn't say that this one completely reinvents Scream and makes it as essential as it used to be, but it's definitely worth a watch. At number 6 is a film that I caught on the Paramount Plus channel. It's called Significant Other, and it's about a couple who go out camping in the woods, as you do in a horror movie, and bad things happen, but also very surprising things happen. The opening scene kind of gives away the genre, but still, this is one of these movies that is absolutely best to go into without reading any reviews. I never read reviews of horror movies anyway. I only read them after I've watched the movie. I don't know about you. Do you do that? This film had some of the best twists that I saw all year. It actually managed to wrong-foot me, and I think of myself as being, reasonably good with twists. I can often see them coming. The main couple are also very likeable, I think, especially the guy, so that really helps. Significant Other. Check it out. We've reached the halfway point of this list, and so this would be a wonderful time for you to hit subscribe if you're enjoying yourself, so you can see more horror and classic Doctor Who content on this channel. At number 5 we have Men. There's a great title, isn't it? Men. That's just a horror movie all by itself. Now, Jessie Buckley stars in this as a woman called Harper, who's recently bereaved and heads out to the countryside to find herself and get over it all, or at least try to. But of course, this being a horror movie, horror is going to follow her out there, isn't it? She meets a load of men in this village where she's gone, and all of them are played by Rory Kinnear, an actor who's mostly known for comedic roles like Count Arthur Strong on TV. But he's very good in this, so he doesn't perhaps show as much variety as you might hope for. He's still very recognisably Rory Kinnear in every role he plays, but he does it with commitment and takes it seriously. It's a really good film. It's the kind of film that you think about afterwards and realise it was probably better than maybe you thought it was at the time. It does take horror very seriously. There's some gore, and especially body horror of the David Cronenberg variety. On one hand, the film does threaten to get a little bit pretentious and a little bit kind of big themey, but on the other hand, I was quite pleased with myself when I figured out what the eye-popping sequence at the end of the movie was supposed to represent, and maybe you will enjoy that too. There haven't been many sort of super scary films on this list in a supernatural fashion, partly because this year I haven't been so much into watching that stuff. I've kind of wanted to see people getting smashed in the face with lump hammers and stuff like that. But Smile is at number 4, probably the scariest film of the year in that kind of supernatural fashion. Hereditary is my favourite post-millennial horror movie, and that scared the hell out of me. It made me hesitate to go to the toilet at 3 a.m. the night after I watched it. And Smile does not scale those lofty heights, but it has its moments that kind of reminded me of Hereditary, and it's a great idea for a movie. I kind of wish I'd had that idea myself as a writer. It's about a Ring-style curse that involves a kind of a smiling entity that inhabits people and just really hounds this psychotherapist who's quite likeable and has kind of a realistic world around her with a kind of an estranged sister, and there's a whole story there. The movie is too long at 2 hours. That's a real shame. It should have been more like 96, and I think we would have been fine with that. And towards the end it loses its way just a touch, but the main body of the film is great, and it's got some great kind of jump scares as well. There's one involving a car that really made me jump, and it was really unusual. Very good stuff. So, Smile. Oh, we're really getting to some remarkable films now. Number 3 is Speak No Evil. That title makes it sound like another kind of typical supernatural possession movie. It's nothing like that at all. It's about a Danish couple who meet a Dutch couple on holiday, and then the Dutch couple invite the Danes to visit their home in the middle of nowhere. And being incredibly polite people, the Danes accept. And so they take their child along to this place to stay with this other family who also have a child, and things seem lovely, but then cracks start to show. Initially, the Danes just write it off as sort of small cultural differences, but those differences grow and become something all the more disturbing and nightmarish. This really isn't a movie for the faint-hearted, let me tell you. This is a proper horror movie, and it's so good. I can't remember the last time a film made me literally say to the screen, get out of there, get out, get in that car and drive off now. That's probably the only thing that might be keeping this movie from the number 1 spot in this list, actually, is that the two main characters, the adult characters, are so frustratingly polite and compliant that you just want to shake them. And is a hell of a movie, and as a parent it certainly gave me pause for thought and made me think about a few things. Let me tell you, speak no evil, watch it. At number 2 we have the most surprising film of the year, which I'm going to tell you next to nothing about, because Barbarian is a film that you really need to go into cold. Don't be tempted to read any reviews, because reviewers can't help themselves. They always have to mention something because they've seen the film and you haven't, and they want to tease something that draws your attention to something that shouldn't have been drawn to, because the filmmakers should be left alone to surprise you. Don't read any reviews. So Barbarian starts off with a woman, Georgina Campbell from Black Mirror. She turns up to an Airbnb property in a really rough neighborhood, but there's a guy already in there. They're a bit awkward around each other, and you know, he seems okay. She feels alright. She feels safe enough to sleep on the sofa that night, and from there on it literally all goes downhill. It really kept me on the edge of my seat, Barbarian. I didn't know what it was going to do next. I didn't know where it was going to go next, and there are some nice kind of transitions and just left field swerves that the movie makes that kind of reminded me, you know, it was a bit like if early Quentin Tarantino made a horror movie. A great mixture of funny and horrific, and also, by the end, weirdly poignant and sad. Yeah, you don't see many movies like this, so Barbarian is special. Hooray! And here we are at number 1. It is Terrifier 2. Just the title of that might make you think, so the second entry in a slasher movie series? Why is that the best movie of 2022, Jason? Well, it's really, really horrible and vicious, and it's the most disturbing horror movie of the year. One moment kind of made me cover my eyes, and I got a bit of a cold sweat during one of the killings, which just goes on forever in a bedroom. Yeah, that bedroom killing is one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen in horror, and I've been watching horror for quite a long time. Yeah, I mean, if you've seen the first Terrifier movie starring Art the Clown going on a killing rampage in an old abandoned warehouse, then you'll know very much what to expect, because in that movie he hangs the woman upside down with her legs wide open and then saws her in half from the top down. Yes, and Terrifier 2 takes the carnage up to a whole new level, because Art the Clown doesn't so much kill people as kind of dismantle them piece by piece. It's just so unpleasant and over the top and gleeful, because Art the Clown is kind of darkly funny as well, and you kind of can't help just watching him to try and find out what on earth he's going to do next and who he's going to kill next. The characters in Terrifier 2 are also a step up from the original movie. You have a teenage girl, Sienna, and her younger brother, Jonathan, and they live with their mum, and Art the Clown seems to kind of gravitate towards them, which is interesting. There's very much more of a supernatural side to this film, and also a weird element of kind of fantasy movies of the 80s as well. But of course it's Terrifier 2, and so the main attraction really is gore, and this movie has lots of it. I mean, I think it will become a rite of passage for teenagers. You know, they're going to dare each other to watch this film and to get through the whole bedroom sequence, you know, without looking away. The film is 138 minutes long, which is about 2 hours and 18 minutes, and on one hand that is too long, but on the other hand I wasn't drumming my fingers and kind of yawning at any point during the movie. It's an interesting step to take, to put that much detail into a slasher movie. There's one dream sequence which we arguably didn't need because it's very long, but on the other hand it has a great image of someone set on fire while playing a banjo, which kind of was stuck in my head, and so for that reason alone it does kind of earn its keep. If you are yearning for the days of really vicious lo-fi horror movies like Maniac or The Burning or The Prowler, this is the movie for you. This is a really gutsy, headstrong, does not give a damn horror movie, and I always love it when horror filmmakers transcend the sort of the genre's boundaries and do things that you're not supposed to do. Yeah, Damien Leone is one of these filmmakers. You know, he really is pushing horror. He does his own effects, and the effects are very good. What a nasty piece of work. Horrible, horrible. And yet here it is at number 1, because horror is about the horrible. Clues in the name. What did you think of Terrifier 2? Get down there and let me know. And as you obviously enjoy horror movies, you will want to watch this video of mine next, or maybe you'll prefer to watch this one here, which the YouTube algorithm thinks you might like. Thanks very much for watching. See you in comments, and don't forget to embrace your obsession.